This is Remote Atlas, remote work, slow travel, and life abroad as a family. Here's exactly how we find places to live as a remote working family. The criteria we use, the red flags we avoid, and what's worked for us after 3 years of full-time travel. When we first started traveling full-time, figuring out where to live was the hardest part. Hotels really didn't give us enough space, and moving around every few days was exhausting, especially travel days. So we switched to almost completely use Airbnb because it was the easiest, especially at that point, and because it gives us everything we need as a family. It has a kitchen, a place for us to work, and enough room for our son to learn, to play, and to feel at home. Today, as I'm filming, we're in our 50th Airbnb. We usually book places for at least 4 weeks. And there's 2 big reasons why we do this. First, Airbnb gives huge long stay discounts, sometimes 20 to 40% cheaper. Second, it helps us avoid burnout. Traveling full-time sounds fun, but constant travel days can drain you quickly, especially when you're working remotely and homeschooling. One tip I can say here is when you're planning, especially at the very beginning, don't try to fit too much in on that first few months. Get your legs under you. Figure out how it is to move around. Traveling around with a lot of luggage, with children, with your laptops and everything else you need to work is very draining. Again, 1 month in each city gives us a routine. And routine is everything when you're balancing work, travel, and family. One thing I always like to say is I'm remote working. Working is critical. It is not just traveling around and working from beaches. We don't do that. I've never pulled out my laptop while sipping a Mai Tai on the beach. I've never done that. And you see people post things like that all the time. I take work seriously. When I'm working, I'm working. It is just like if I was at our home in Houston in 2020. I am working the same way no matter where I am. And that's where an apartment or an Airbnb or something like that with its own office is critical. You can do it by working from like a co-working space. But again, time zones can be a problem. So if you're working a US time zone and you're in Europe, so your day may end, if you're on the East Coast, it may end at 1 a.m. If you're in Central, it may be, midnight. And you have to think about that. A lot of the co-working spaces close earlier than that, or you'll be alone in some office in a city that you're not super familiar with. And then you have to get back to your Airbnb, to your family at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And that can be a little stressful, especially if you're doing that every day. It may not be the ideal way for you to work. It isn't for me. I've done it. It's just not the way that I like to work. And it's even worse if you're in Asia and you're starting work at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night and finishing in the morning. It can be very difficult. Now, that may actually even work better than Europe now that I think about it, because you can go into the office at night while your family sleeps. You've not disturbed anybody and they wake up about the time that you get home. But again, I prefer to have an office set up in the Airbnb that I'm at. It gives me more time to spend with my family, and it gives me more of a routine and a feeling like if we were just right back home where we started. So when we are choosing a place to live, we stick to the same 4 priorities every single time. Number 1 is safety. It always comes first. We read recent reviews carefully. We look at the neighborhood on Google Maps. We'll look online for the neighborhood, for the place, the city that we're going to be in. We'll check if the building or the street feels comfortable for evening walks while we do our looking on Street View. And if it doesn't feel right, we just skip it. We go somewhere else. Number 2, and this is super critical back to the working part, is internet. As a remote worker, unreliable Wi-Fi is a deal breaker. We always message the host and we ask for a speed test screenshot. If they don't provide one, we just move on. A good setup with good Wi-Fi is really one of the main deciding factors here. If we can't work, we can't do what we're doing. So having a good work environment is critical. Number 3, walkability. We choose places where we can walk to parks, restaurants, public transit, and the things that we want to do in that town or that city. Walking is one of the best parts of slow travel. It makes life easier, and it helps us really feel like we're a part of that culture, a part of that city. And it's really, really good exercise. So walking, and we walk a lot. Getting your 10,000, 12,000 steps is easy to do when, especially in Europe and in Asia even. Number 4, access to amenities. It almost goes with the walkability, but it doesn't have to be walking. Grocery stores, restaurants, playgrounds, pharmacies, anything we might need within about 5 to 10 minutes walking is important. It sounds really simple, but it makes that day-to-day life much smoother. Our actual search process is pretty simple. We'll start by picking a region, and within that region, we'll look at visas. Visas are important, right? We can't just assume that we can go everywhere that we want to go. So we'll look at visas, how easy it is, how it conflicts with the previous place that we've been. So we're fortunate to be U.S. citizens, so if we go to Europe, we can stay 90 days in one place in the Schengen group, which is a big group of Europe, a big part of Europe. But then we have to leave for 90 days. So we'll find a place, if we're going to be 90 days in Schengen, preferably we'll pick one country like we're doing now, and we'll maybe 2 different cities that we're doing now. It keeps us from having to have those terrible travel days all the time. And we'll look at what places, what regions fit our criteria, and then we'll narrow it down to the city, and then we'll open up Airbnb, and we'll look within that city. We'll look at the map. We'll look for the places that we would like to be close to. Can we afford, right? Money is important here. Can we afford to be close to the old town, right? That's a deciding factor on where we go. If it's August, we're not going to pick Southern Europe because we're not going to find an apartment for less than $3,000 for a month, right? We're going to have to pick somewhere else, unfortunately. But we're going to pick places both on what we can afford and on the area and in all of our 4 criteria. And we'll look on Airbnb for that area. We'll narrow it down to 3 or 4. My wife and I will take a look at each of those. We'll look at the reviews. We'll filter for entire place, has to have a kitchen, has to have Wi-Fi, obviously, has to have 1 or 2 bedrooms at least. If we can have 3, it's even better because I can use a third as an office. Remember, when you say 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms, it could mean that the living room is included as a bedroom when you're looking at Airbnb. Really take a look at where you sleep. That's a part of Airbnb, so you can make sure that there are separate rooms for what you need. If it's summer, of course, I'm going to need AC. If it's winter, I'm going to need some heating. So those are things to take a look at. I would want a long stay discount for a month or more. You can usually get really, really good discounts that way. I look for a location, again, that's close to where I want to be. If I can be closer to the old town, or I can be close to some sort of thing like hiking or a big park or something like that, that's what we look for. And then I'll look through the reviews. What are people saying? If it's just 2 or 3 reviews, it's hard to judge that place. And we've gone to places with no reviews, but we'll reach out to the host and we'll actually talk to them and find out more about that location before we commit to it. If it's close to groceries, transit, and parks, if it has Wi-Fi, if it has a kitchen, if it has AC or heating, if it's not, if it has an elevator in the building, that's an important one too. Or if it's on a low floor, because we don't mind going up a flight of stairs or 2 flights of stairs. But if it's on the 5th floor and there's no elevator and we have a lot of luggage, that's really not going to work for us. But if it meets all these criteria, we will reach out. We'll get that screenshot for the internet speed test, and then we'll go ahead and book it at that point. And we'll do the Airbnb a lot of times before we get our flights. So the flights are the other thing. You're going to have to look. We use Skyscanner, we use AI, we use a lot of different methods to find good prices that include, for the luggage that we have as well. We'll try to end the timing. We don't want to be on flights for 30 hours and save $100. We'll take a measured approach to how we travel. If we can get to a place without flying, that's a big bonus. If we can go by train, we'll do that. And our favorite way of traveling is by cruise, which sounds crazy and expensive, but actually it's not. And I'll do another video on that later, but that goes into more detail. But we'll do these trans-Pacific and transatlantic cruises, which are 15 days, and they're a lot less expensive because the cruise ships are repositioning to a new place, and you get to see a lot of things. It does have good enough Wi-Fi for me to work, amazingly, and we get to see new places that we might not be able to. And it's a great place for Anthony to interact with other kids for, 2 weeks straight. So that's great. And that'll come in another video. Every once in a while, we won't use Airbnb. Again, like a cruise ship, right? But in some destinations, especially when we want to visit a lot of places in a short amount of time, we'll stay in resorts or hotels that offer some privacy and some extra space for working, and they have good Wi-Fi. We've done this in 2 different places in 3 different places in Thailand. We did it in Pai, which is north of Chiang Mai. We went to Krabi for a week. We went to Phuket for a week. And in all of those, we used resorts, and it worked out perfectly. I didn't have a separate room for working, but we managed. So there are some red flags to avoid when you're trying to find a place to stay. And over time, we've looked at these, and these are things that when we see them, we move on. So number 1, hosts who won't share Wi-Fi speeds. They'll say, it's fine, no one's ever complained, that sort of thing. When they do it, normally the Wi-Fi is not very good. You need a screenshot, preferably, of the speed test. They need to at least know how to do that. If you have reviews that mention mold, poor heating or AC, or extreme amounts of noise, like if it's over a club or something like that, and I know I have to work during those times, we'll skip it. If the photos look really staged or emptied or copied, you can look in a city and you see 3 different Airbnbs and they all have the same pictures, avoid all 3. Listings with tons of rules or penalties for everything, it becomes so complicated that you probably don't want to do it. Locations that are super far from public transit or far from other places we'd want to go to, maybe it's next to a grocery store, which is great, but it's not close to anything else, then that doesn't really work for us. It's not a good experience for traveling. And remember, we work, but also Anthony has to study and he has to enjoy his life, right? We have to think a lot about having a good experience for our son so that he can get out and see things and do things and interact with other kids and all of those things that are important as you're growing up. And if we're in a place that doesn't really provide that, that doesn't work. So we'll skip it when we see that. Or if there are buildings that are under construction at that moment, we won't do it. If we're in a place, if we're going to a region who potentially could have weather issues or earthquakes or something like that, that's another thing that we'll take into consideration. Both the timing, so if it's during typhoon season in the Philippines, that might not be a good time to go. Or if same thing, Vietnam or Thailand. If it's smoky season in Chiang Mai, we won't go then. The prices will be really low, but it's not worth going and putting ourselves at risk. So we take those things into account, and also the building. So if the building itself looks like it's falling apart and it's in an earthquake-prone area, we'll skip it. So this simple system has helped us find stable, comfortable homes in cities all over the world. It gives us a reliable place to work. It gives our son room to learn and to play. And it gives us enough calm to enjoy the places we're visiting. For a remote working family, the place you choose really matters. It can determine whether or not you enjoy the country that you're in, your experience traveling, your experience working remotely, all of that. So it's critical that you do take the time to find the place that's going to work for you. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to support your lifestyle. If you want more tips on remote work, slow travel, and living abroad as a family, subscribe to Remote Atlas. We're sharing everything that we've learned from 3 years on the road, and we'd love you to join us as we go forward. And with that, take care.